Well, I guess so.
All right, turning it over to you, sir.
So are there things blocking my PowerPoint? Sometimes when
No, I can see it.
you see the PowerPoint and nothing else, like you don't see anything else.
Just your PowerPoint.
All right.
PowerPoint.
Ooh, I just recognized something. How you spell my last name, Dr. Tinsley?
Oh, watch
What?
the typo. Oh my God.
Bolter.
No effective writing on my end. Ding, ding, ding.
Wow.
I will send you a correct version for your dossier.
Oh, my dossier.
She's been so busy, so
Yeah, I get
forgive
it.
her, please.
I do. I do. I charge it to her head and not her heart. All right. So listen, folks, I'm here to talk to you, I guess, today about learn, lead, and advocate, transforming self to better serve clients. And so I'm going to do it by way of telling you a little bit about my story, okay? That's how I plan on going through this. And um, so, my secondary topic would be counselors building foundations, unstoppable use. So I know it's the end of the semester. I know that you all probably have a lot of things on your mind with regards to graduating or moving on or going to the next semester, fighting imposter syndrome, doing all kinds of things when it comes to counseling. And so I hope that I can hit a couple of different things. I'll try to be quick. I have quite a few slides. I'm probably not going to stay on all of them. I'm going to go very quickly through it so that we can get to question and answer, especially I know that people want to leave by 9:30. So if you'll bear with me and let me share a little bit about why I'm here, I will get through it. So it looks like my PowerPoint doesn't want to work with my clicker. So therefore, I'm going to come at it a different way. So when I was younger, and you'll see the relevance of why I'm talking from this perspective a little bit later. When I was younger, I didn't know that I was the expert of my own story. I didn't know that I had the right to my own voice. I only listened to what other people told me to do. I only tried to follow the status of what the world said we had to do, especially as a young person. And it wasn't until I started to get into counseling and getting into understanding this role as a counselor that I started to recognize that I did have a voice. And it gave me the opportunity to be able to speak before you all, as well as in other venues. And so I share this picture with you right here today because this is me speaking at my alma mater, who is playing tonight. And so I'm excited about that. I truly believe that my life experiences helped me to become a transformational leader. I very much like, I believe, President Obama, that when I started to say, yes, I can, instead of yes, I can't, or no, I can't, I realized that I had something that I could share. I had something that I can say. When people were pumping me up, that's why I don't really like to have my bio read or anything along those lines, because it makes me feel like I think that I'm all that, and I don't think that I'm all that. I think that I'm just a hard worker. And I think that my hard work has really given me the opportunities that I have to kind of be in leadership and to have my voice be heard. And I'm going to share with you a couple of different things that I think helped me to have a voice that could be heard. You have to be studied. You have to be able to know what you're talking about. And so one of my philosophies of life stems from this quote from Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. And as a leader, I recognize that we have to help people recognize that they have to step up. They have to be advocates. They have to be social justice advocates. I don't believe in the word ally anymore. What I do believe in is co-conspirator. And for me, a co-conspirator is someone who will be in that room, that space that I'm not in, speaking on my behalf to make sure that they're doing it for all individuals, being inclusive of all individuals. And so I don't have to be worried about whether or not I'm stepping into spaces or if people are looking out for me, because I know that they are, because they are right with me, lockstep, hand in hand, moving towards a better goal. I had the opportunity in my lifetime to work with a group of people to create the multicultural social justice counseling competencies. And again, that goes back to having the ability to know what you're talking about. Having something up in your brain based on knowledge, based on research, based on life experiences that can come to the table and help create the types of changes that we need in the world. Knowledge most definitely is power. So how I got there, and I'm going to read this to you because I think this is really important. There is something to be said about purposeful writing. Writing is so important, right? So developing strong writing skills is about learning. It is having the ability to discern and enhance your own personal level of expertise. What it is not solely about producing a well-formatted APA style paper. We bring this to the table as instructors to help you to create the lived experiences, the research experiences that are necessary to know what you're talking about. It is a firm understanding of the principles of writing so that you show up in spaces as the expert. You can't show up not knowing what you're talking about. If you ever seen anybody have a conversation with no other information but talking points, you typically think that they just are unskilled, incompetent, don't know what they're talking about. And so you walk away, right? Most people. It leaves no room for someone to dispute you because you speak and write with authority, drawing from a knowledge base that is so well-informed and reliable that people listen and trust you as the source. So from a faculty point of view, though, it helps us know whether or not you know what you're talking about, whether or not we can pass you on, because we're gatekeepers. And so I wanted to read that one out personally because I think it's really important. The other thing that I think is really, really, truly important is that we start to recognize that grades, while important, are not really that important. Your clients don't give a flying flip about what grades you got in the class. All they want to know is if you're competent and if you know what you're doing, which I believe the research does for you. When you're writing and you're understanding what this principle means in counseling, it gets ingrained in your head. And you have been a part of that research so that you know what you're talking about. So when you're with your clients, again, they just want to know that you're a competent counselor. So grades are important in a real sense, right? So I would like you to reframe what grades really mean. So when you get a B or a C in a class, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does happen, it shouldn't be about, hey, give me extra points so I get the A. It should be about, hey, what did I miss? What do I need to know better? Sitting down with your instructor. When I was in my master's program, we sat down with my instructors sometimes into the wee hours of the morning. Our class was like your class, late, started at like 7 or 8 o'clock and then went to like 10 o'clock. And sometimes we were in that room with the instructor till 10 minutes to 2. Sitting there having a good conversation, picking the brain of the instructor. So I'm not trying to get them in trouble over there in Pillar. They're probably like, oh no, we ain't doing that. But what I did with my program, it really helped me to understand, because the learning was not about the classroom experience. It was about life experiences. It wasn't about the book. It was about hearing and tapping into the brain of our instructors. And so that's where the real learning was. So it's not about grades as much as it's about being impacted by the experience as a whole. And so that is what's going to help you to hold up the world, right? also, I believe it's important to kind of be thinking and behaving from a cultural intention. All right. So cultural intentionality is really about understanding the world, understanding not only your cultures, your intersectionalities, but others as well. And knowing that when you're working with certain individuals, there may be race-based trauma. And so being prepared and ready for it and understanding with that, that's what being schooled means when you talk about how you can work with other individuals, no matter what race or culture they come from, gender expression, any of those things. You get to understand them from the perspective of where they are coming from. And so for race-based trauma, you need to understand what the cognition and where that's coming from, why people may be avoiding certain things, what the arousal is when it comes to that, what happens, is there anxiety, are people being hypervigilant, what mood are you in, what mood are your clients in, and what is the intrusion, right? Are they going over and over and over in their mind something that may have happened? And so those things need to be tapped into. And you have to understand that it could be very cultural in regards to why the person is dealing with this. It's not some little, everybody goes through the same thing or feels the same way about something. They have the right to their own individuality when it comes to that. And so because we are coming from so many dimensions, these are the intersections that many people are coming from. We need to be aware of what those intersections are and how they impact how somebody lives their day-to-day life. I want to talk from a social awareness piece. So as a leader, I find myself to be, first of all, a servant leader. And I really look at what the impact is of social awareness, social activities, life experiences, all those things help me understand what is going through a person's mind. Now, social emotional learning is under the gun right now by people who think that we are getting into people's minds and making them feel bad about themselves and all these different things. But you need to be able to go into your brain space to understand why you feel and live the way that you live, why you are impacted by things that are happening in the world. And it's not just from individual experiences. When I first started teaching, I came across this passage. I was asked to go and speak for a elementary school. I used to be not an elementary, a middle school. I used to be a middle school counselor. And so I was in my first teaching position, and there was a lot of students who were fighting in a particular school district. It was a predominantly white school district in Fenton, Missouri. And the reason why they were fighting is because students from St. Louis were being bussed in. And because of this, there was a lot of tension, anxiety, strife, maybe race-based trauma, right? That people were feeling because of this new shift in their understanding and their way of living. And so I wanted to know what I can talk to these kids about. And what came up for me as I was doing it was this particular poem. And it was a passage that came from Reckless Appetites. It's a book. And so I really was drawn to this because I wanted to talk to these kids about this. And if I had time, I would ask you all what of these lines resonate with you. But because we are working on short time, I will just share with you that I believe that what I was trying to get across to those kids about getting to know each other and seeing each other is very similar to the same message that I'm sharing today, right? And the two passages that I would say to you that makes me feel that way is, what acts of wickedness would you inflict on someone merely because you didn't get your way? And the other is, there's artistry and solace in everything and everyone. Let them feed you. And to me, opening yourself up to a new world, not just your four walls, to see what's happening outside of your city, your town, or your state, and going and visiting the world, you get to open yourself up and see other things. And you're gravitating to understanding the world and not just your own perspective or those things that people have told you that you should know about someone that you don't have any real idea about. And so when I think about me using that passage about what acts of wickedness and these kids fighting each other, I look at what we've been doing in this America since January 6th and the insurrection and all those other things, and that acts of wickedness that have happened because someone didn't get their way. And so in the work that I do, I talk about privilege, and privilege for me was a word that I never really paid any attention to as a linguist, right? But as I was reading this word and doing a presentation once, I realized that in the middle of the word privilege was the word vile. Again, not a linguist, but when I saw that, I was like, wow, a word that means so much about having privileges and favor and all these other things, in the middle of it, smack dab in the middle of it, is extremely unpleasant, morally bad, wicked. Sometimes people use it in those ways when they have privileges. And so my job is, as a person with a spokesperson mentality, or somebody who has a soapbox somewhat to sit on, um, I get to talk about how we can bust some myths. And a lot of times people think that CRT or banning books are going to help us get to another side, but I think that it doesn't, because we don't get to talk about the real reality behind why people are doing and saying and really hurting others, harming others. Why it is so deep-seated in America that people do this is because we don't have the real communication about why this happened so we can get past it. And so what we do instead is we try to deny that it's ever happened, right? And I think that if we stop denying it and not banning books or taking them off the shelves or any of those other different things, if we actually read them and learn from them and talk about these things, then we can move into a better existence. We can find out why we have been in this state in at any rate, why we are here. And so it's really important. And so, and understanding, why everybody is different and what that means to how they move along. And I'm just moving quickly through this, but you all understand that there's been disparities that people have gone through that we as counselors need to understand if we're going to help our clients move through whatever the types of things that are dealing with that they need help with. And so while you may not believe or trust or believe in the things that I believe in, that's not my role. My role is to expose people to the types of things that are happening in society, and that we start to build each other up, that we motivate people, and we don't just hate and put blame and all these other things. We start to try to understand people. And so success all depends on you, really does. And I'm asking most of my folks to just lock arms to do the right thing so that the world becomes a better space and better place. So we've seen things like this, equity and equality, social determinants, these things. All these people are behind the fence, right? They get to watch. Well, most people don't want to just watch, right? They don't want the barriers that are in front of them to stop them from doing certain things. Now they start taking this conceptual framework and they're looking at it very differently. Like talking about it, what's the reality for people in the real world? What's equality actually really look like? What's equity actually look like? And what justice looks like? For me, though, I'm beyond this because I want people to be able to be included. I don't want to just be watching the game. That's what it means to putting people on the table, right? Putting people at the table is that you make sure that people are able to be a part of the decision making, that they are in the CEO position, they're doing things, their voice is being heard, right? That's what true liberation is. That we are not only just watching the game from behind the fence, behind the barriers that stop us, but we are actually playing in the game. And that's a really important point that we as social justice advocates, as counselors, that we should be putting forth to the world to help create the changes that are necessary. We have to step outside of our comfort zone. I won't stay here, but we need to move right through the fear, and then we need to learn. And from that learning, we grow. Very much like that conceptual framework is the becoming anti-racist. What we move through the fear of what it means, right? That we stop trying to be just comfortable in the existence of the world. And anti-racism means that we just try to treat people well. That we learn, we educate ourselves about the racial structures that are in place that have stopped people or impeded their progress. And we grow from these experiences. So I want to kind of talk about myself a little bit. And very quickly, I'm just going to go through these slides, right? I always wondered, most of my parents are deceased, and I wondered what their hopes and dreams were for me. And the reason why I wondered what their hopes and dreams were for me is because after they passed, and I didn't really have these conversations, which I wish I had, I start to think about the fact that they experienced all these types of atrocities. They lived through these types of things. Draw your attention to the water fountain, and the one that's dingy and dirty looking, and it doesn't look like anybody should want to be drinking out of it, plus the one that everybody who has privilege gets to drink through. So these types of things are what my parents saw. Neither one of my parents, well, my father died the year after, but got to see a Black man in the presidency. They didn't know that. And so these types of things are reality, right? I don't care about this hat. What I care about is that we can talk about what this hat means to other people. People are somehow always impacted by what this hat means. Some people think it means one thing, some others think it means something else. And while that is true, we should be able to communicate what these concerns are for each other. But we are always told that it's taboo to talk about these different things. And people feel like they have rights because of certain things. My mother was one of 17. She is the person on the right standing, second one from the right. When my mother was 10 years old, she was involved in a fire that was to burn down her home with them inside. This house, if you were to look at this, it was winter in Connecticut. My grandfather owned a farm, and this is the house that was on the farm. And in that, he had his children, their rooms were upstairs. So if you can see the roof, and then the second landing, they had to jump out of that, their rooms, because they were sleeping one night and the house was caught on fire. The whole house was engulfed in flames and they had to jump out. Now, when you're sleeping, you're probably not sleeping in your shoes, and they weren't. So they jumped down off of the porch into the ground that was snowy. And so for several years, several months, they lived in a fire station. They were a family of 15 at the time. My grandmother was pregnant with her 16th child during that time, and they were living in a firehouse. My grandfather, because he owned the land, had a barn on the land. They went to go repurpose it so that they could move into the barn. 2 weeks before they moved in, they burned that down. They didn't want these people to be there. By virtue of the fact that my mother was 10 years old, I wouldn't be here today if they had accomplished their mission. So when you talk about purpose, you talk about standing up and speaking out against atrocities and the things that are happening in the world, I believe that the reason why I have this platform is to share with people that these things happen. This is history. This is not critical race theory. This is history that people have gone through, and in our lifetime. And so things like George Floyd's murder impacts me because I consider it to be continuous traumatic stress disorder. And when I talk about this, I talk about the fact that what continuous traumatic stress disorder is very much like PTSD, but it's continuous. It's things that continue to haunt you, to mess with you, to do whatever, and the anxiety that comes from this, right? And so every day when I'm going out, I have learned to discern between the sounds of 3 different sirens, whether it be a fire truck, an ambulance, and most definitely a police car. Typically, when I hear an ambulance, nothing happens. I'm just looking to see if I'm out of the way so they can go by. But if it's a police siren, I have this visceral reaction to it. And I never understood what that was all about until George Floyd's murder. When I was in my 20s, I went to visit a friend of mine in Sandwich, Mass. I had met them. I was just out of my undergraduate years, and I was at a conference. I met a friend. They invited me up very close to Hyannisport, which is a part of the Cape Cod. And one evening we went out. And because I was new to the area, they took me out to a club, and it was summertime, and he and 3 of his friends and I went out. Now, when I got there, I had one drink earlier in the evening, but I pretty much, because I was in a new place, I just kind of chilled and just was watching in my existence in that space. Well, at the end of the evening, it was about 2 o'clock. People were being ushered out. The club was closing. And again, we were all circling around doing certain things, different things. So we got, separated and whatnot. And so I stepped outside and I was standing there waiting for them to come outside and go to the car and do whatever. So, but there were police officers that were outside. They were telling people, hey, get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way, go home. We told you not to stand here, those types of things. So I'm standing there because I'm waiting for someone. This goes with not complying, right? So it's like, not that I'm not complying, it's that I have nowhere to go because I didn't drive. I'm waiting for people to come out of the club. So this police officer comes up to me, and I think it's more of a toy cop because it's one of those people that are seasonal, and it was summertime. And so this person comes up to me, and he's standing right in my face, and he yells out, "Hey, we told you to move." So he hadn't done it to anybody else that I've seen. And so I turned to the person who was standing next to me, because I had a person on the left and right of me, and I said, "Why did he come to me and do that?" That was my exact words. And that's how much I mean, this is how traumatic it was that I remember exactly what he said to me. And and so he turns around, he says, "All right, buddy, you're drunk." And he threw me up against the paddy wagon, and he handcuffed me and threw me into the paddy wagon. I say all that to say that I repressed all that. I didn't think about that. This didn't come up for me until I started to think about George Floyd and not complying and all these other things. And I was like, sometimes this is what people are fearful of when you see somebody running from the cops or whatever have you, because different experiences make that happen. This experience is maybe one of the reasons why when I hear police sirens that I have the visceral reaction that I do. As a counselor, it would be important for somebody to be able to understand that story and to be able to work with somebody from that perspective. I had not thought about it. I repressed it, and it didn't come up for me for many, many years. And it wasn't until I saw the murder of George Floyd that I didn't have control of my body. I realized that. And then when I saw him not have control of his body, I started to feel what he was going through. And so critical race theory is not what this is. It's history, what helps us kind of remember the past. And so I have a clip here. I'm not going to let you hear it right now because I think my time is kind of winding up. So maybe one day I'll send it to Dr. T and she can share it with you. All right. So my question to you all is, what are you going to do to make a difference? Right. Again, I talked about anti-racism earlier, and anti-racism is very, very important for us to do. That we look at, it's not about personalizing it with any one person. It's about breaking down systems that have been historically racist towards all other individuals, right? So this second quote here, anti-racism is the practice of identifying, challenging, and changing the value structures and behaviors that perpetuate systemic racism. So it's about structures. And so when people are talking about fighting racism, they're not talking about fighting people and whether somebody is racist or somebody is this or somebody is that. It's really truly about whether or not we can break down these organizational structures that are the barriers to a person having access, having equity, all those things that everybody should have a right to. So we have to figure out who we are. What kind of agent are we? Are we a person who's out there doing the work that's helping people to all find their happiness? Or are we the ones who are still being able to discriminate and oppress and marginalize and exploit or disenfranchise people? Most organizational charts, even at higher ed institutions, look like this, where the worker bees are the ones they say, oh, we value diversity and inclusion, but they're not in leadership positions. And so we have to change that. We do that by hopefully understanding what it takes to be a privileged and or marginalized counselor working with privileged or marginalized clients. And I won't go into that, but hopefully that's something that you all know about. I believe that self-knowledge is really important. When you know who you are, you can't hate somebody else. It means that you love yourself enough to know that you can love others and let other people be, that you don't get into their womb or you don't get into who they love, that you really actually are there for them to be their best selves. there's no such thing as neutral education. Education functions as an instrument to bring about conformity or freedom. And I'm going to fight for freedom. Paulo Freire says it very well in his Pedagogy of the Oppressed, that we should be somehow out there making sure that everybody has a right to this education, has a right to the tree of life, has a right to whatever that it might be. So again, I ask you, who are you? What kind of social advocate will you be, right? And so there's different ways. You can be a citizen, you can be a rebel, you could be a change agent in some way, a reformer. These things help to create social change. And the change is about us bettering the world, not somebody taking from somebody else or taking or stopping somebody from having. It's about everyone having access so that they can have their own. When my daughter was 8 years old, this was during the pandemic, I thought I was shielding her, similar to how I think my parents were trying to shield me from the things that happened to them when I was younger. But my daughter drew this picture, and I was really kind of taken aback by it. My wife was as well. And so we asked her, what's this? What's going on here? And it looks like a cross and some other things. And so she sat down and she kind of explained to us, this is her at 8 years old, that, you know, white people get to love each other and be together. And that's what that picture symbolizes with the rainbow heart and all this other thing. She says, but Black people, their hearts are breaking. 8 years old. And so I asked her, I said, tell me about the BLM. And she said, well, the B is Black for Black people. The M is brown for brown people. And the L is for the blood. And I knew right then and there that I can't shield my daughter from the world, that she was seeing these things, whether it was from social media, us watching the news, us being really consumed with all of that during the time of George Floyd's death and beyond, because there was so much tick about what we're going to do to make sure that everybody had freedoms and access and equity and all these different things. There was such a DEI spin on things until now, where everybody's trying to bust it up and say that it's not important. And that when we do those types of things, we're making some people feel ashamed or guilty, while others are capitalizing and having unfair advantages. Well, I don't think that my being here in front of you is an unfair advantage. I think I have a right to be here. And so how do we change some of that, right? So as leaders, we recognize that the system is not built for all people. So there's a story, The Elephant and the Giraffe, that you may have heard of as a fable. And what happens in this fable is that giraffe has this building and he has this business, and he is, it's all designed for the giraffe. The hallways are nice and tall and skinny. The building is just a phenomenal building that's designed specifically for the giraffe to maneuver around in. But the giraffe reaches out to the elephant and he says, you know what, I like the way that you think. I want you to come by and maybe help me out with this or that or whatever have you. So the elephant comes in and he can't get to the door because the structure is not built for him. When we talk about bringing people to the table, if the table is not built for people to be around it, this is what the elephant was experiencing. So when the elephant went in, started shaking things up, and the giraffe was like, oh no, you can't be here. You are messing up my home. You are messing up my place of business. You can't be here, because the elephant was walking and knocking down walls and all these other things. That's shaking it up, right? But we have to create a house that fits the elephant and the giraffe and whomever else needs to be up in there. And so I don't know what you as a leader want to do, but I'm doing it for my daughter. Her name is Summer Joy. When she was born in 2012, I was a happy person. I was very pleased that I brought someone into this world, but I want this world to react to her and allow her to be her best self. She can have the gains that she can have because of her presence and her intelligence and what she brings to the table. So Summer is my muse. What is your muse? What are you using to make sure that every single person has a right to whatever access that they can have within reason, right? Without harming, without hurting others, but because they have what it takes to get there. And so As a leader, I started to become a mentor. It was read to you from Dr. Tinsley earlier about some of the things that I've been involved in. And so as a leader, as a person, it's really important that we recognize all the things that we are capable of doing, and the mentors who have helped us, and who we are, and the people who we are mentoring in regards to that. So again, Summer, she's my muse. I use her every day to do this. She is worth the fight for me. That's why I sacrifice, why I'm here right now with you all after just finished teaching my course, that I want to speak to you about why it's important to be good leaders, that we bring about unity and morality. And meliorism is just us coming together and working together, and that there's equity involved. And equity doesn't mean that we quit. It means that we continue to work hard, right? And that we respect one another. So that's the really important piece. I want us to always be in it. I want us to win, right? And we can do this together. And as you all can see, I love emojis now. So I need to put that piece in there. So there's a book that I use in my courses. It's called Unstoppable Me. And some of you all may have heard this. And I think this book is really, really, truly important in terms of how we work our way through lives. And I think as counselors, this book is a jewel when it comes to how we should see ourselves, how we can break away from the imposter syndrome when it comes to the work that we do. But so with Unstoppable Me, it has 10 different well, for a children's book, chapters, right? And so how do we transform into leaders, right? That we recognize in ourselves that we are great no matter what. And that's for all of us. And that persistence pays off. So you're getting your degree to be a counselor to help others. You're staying persistent, not worrying about grades, but staying persistent, but learning the craft is going to be really important. That you welcome the unknown. That's what we as counselors always do. When a client comes in, we don't know what they're bringing, but we're willing to sit and work with them and help them work through whatever issues that they're going through. That we have a choice in the matter of how we show up every single day. That we say farewell to worry, right? That we try to, I'm trying to work on that myself with the anxiety that I have around police officers, right? Getting that out of my system, because that peace will begin with me. And that we enjoy the here and now, every moment. That healthy, whoever we are, however we see being healthy, not what the world's standards are about being healthy, but how we come up and we show up in that. As counselors, we are creative. We have to be able to pivot at the drop of a hat. And what can you give is the social justice piece of what counseling is. So I really, truly love this book in terms of what we as counselors can do and how we can promote who we are and how we can find ourselves and do the right thing. These 10 steps can help us to be unstoppable. So my last thing I'm going to share with you all is a poem, and it goes back to what I shared earlier in my message when I said when I was younger. So this poem speaks to as I grew older. It was a long time ago. I had almost forgotten my dream, but then it was there then in front of me. And maybe you all have dreams, things that you are wondering how it's going to play out, all these different things. Hopefully they're not nightmares for you, but you have these dreams. But then they were there right there in front of me, bright like a sun, my dreams. You know, you think about the eclipse today when the moon came across the sun, and it just kind of darkened everything that was going on, but it rose slowly, this wall between me and my dreams until it touched the sky. The wall, the shadow, I am black, not black because of my skin tone, but I'm black because I'm in this shadow. I'm in this darkness. Darkness can be anxiety. It can be all these things that our clients are going through that we have to think about. How can we help them work through those types of things? Even in ourselves, we need to find consultation or work with supervisors to help us work through whatever issues are coming up for us when this wall starts to show up, when that imposter syndrome starts to step in. Right? So this shadow is there. My hands, my dark hands, they break through this wall. But I'm asking you all to link arms with me, and all of our hands break through and help to break down the systemic systems that are in place that stop people from finding their dream. That we shatter this darkness, that we smash this night, that we break this shadow into 1,000 lights of sun, into 1,000 whirling dreams of sun, This was a dedication in my dissertation, talking about how hard it was to work through that process, to write that monster of a document so that I could become Dr. Kent Butler. All of us have challenges. The challenges should be within ourselves and what we want to do, not because somebody is stopping or blocking our progress. And so with that, I'm going to stop my sharing and hopefully open the door up to whatever you all want to talk about. Thank you again for this opportunity. And I hope that something that I said to you makes sense.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Thank
sharing.
you. It was awesome. Your
Yeah.
daughter is adorable.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll open it up for questions if anyone has questions or comments.
Can you everybody turn on their cameras? What's going on? Can I see people?
Hi, Dr. Butler. I'm not able to turn on my camera because I'm still in my classroom camera and I'm not allowed to use two.
All
So
right.
forgive me, please.
I forgive you.
And that is Dr. Bradshaw, and she is the Dean of our Psychological and Behavioral Sciences program at Pillar College.
Cool. Cool. Dr. Tinley, I don't know if I hit what you wanted me to hit. I hope I did. But
You
I
did.
I
You
want
did.
to answer any questions that you all have for me.
Yes. Anybody have questions or comments?
In his bio, you mentioned something about a podcast that he does. Does he still do that podcast?
The podcast is far gone. It was during my
Okay.
presidency, but they are available on YouTube. It's called The Voice of Counseling. If you were to go to the ACA's YouTube channel, you can find them there. So they're all
Thank
there.
you.
No problem. No problem.
And Jamie, I think you would like him. He had different guests on different topics as it relates to the field of counseling. So
Yeah, it has some heavy hitters in there. I talked with Gerald Corey. I talked with Sam Gladden before he passed, and Cortland Lee, and there's a whole bunch of folks that people I looked up to that I really wanted to highlight in this podcast. So feel free to watch.
thank you. Holly Marie.
Dr. Butler, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your story. Every aspect of your story resonated with me. It was some tearful moments within myself. And when you mentioned about imposter syndrome and some of the things that hinder us as counselors, it was very relatable, and it just made me feel like I'm not alone in this journey. I am not alone. And the things that you share about your history particularly, but it becomes a part of our history as well. And
everybody
how
has a story.
you got through that.
Amen.
Correct.
Everybody has a story. And I think that's one of the things as counselors we need to recognize is that we don't know where somebody's come from. And if we don't dig deep or unpeel the layers, then we won't have the ability to make sure that they can get healed.
I just like your vulnerability. Thank you for saying that. I like your vulnerability, especially as being a man of color and sharing the truth, not in anger, because we have to kind of sometimes remember that our men of color, brown or black, or just any other color, they go through some difficult things, and you being so vulnerable and saying like, listen, I have triggers that when I hear siren, I have had an experience, and it's very heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking because many of us can relate. We have our children, we have our grandchildren, and we don't want them to experience these things that you said that you don't want Summer Joy to go through, but we can't help it because of the world that we in. But we can make some changes, as you're saying, as becoming agents of change. And I just wanted to say thank you for your vulnerability and you just sharing your story.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Dr. Butler, if I may jump in, and again, this is the one with the black screen right there.
I see you. I see you.
So
Charlene's next. I see you, Charlene.
Okay, great. I just wanted to encourage those who have listened today, because we've been discussing this. My class that has joined is an undergraduate class, but they
Okay.
are interested in counseling and to move further into graduate school as well. And we have been discussing the imposter syndrome and how that limits your fulfilling your potential as well. And what you have shared from your humble beginning to the epitome of the profession has really been encouraging, not only to me, but I'm sure to many of the students. And then you have reiterated what we have always been saying, that the person of the therapist is one of the most important ingredients for successful therapy. So in terms of finding out who you are and dealing with the things that will hold you back and still be intentional in pursuing, self-empowerment and being the best you, they're on the right track in this profession.
I 100% agree with you. Thank you for that. Charlene.
I was curious to find what your experience have been, and have you dealt with any people that have worn the Make America Great hat? And what has been your response if you have dealt with people such as that in terms of, I don't know, maybe using cognitive reframing if you had, or or what was your approach? How could you tell me a little bit about it? I'm very interested.
So I'm a firm believer in difficult dialogues. And as counselors, I take the approach of what I would do to create and develop a dialogue in a group setting. And so there's different things that we do. There's confidentiality, there's safe space, there's people, you can talk if you want to talk. And so when I am working with individuals from that perspective, I try to create a safe space for them to talk about. And so my dealings with people at this stage of my life with the red hat has been in small groups, and sometimes having individual conversations with people because I bring it up. I don't shy away from the conversation. And so in bringing it up, I want to also make sure that I am opening up space for the type of dialogue that is important around it. And I think about the different things that stop conversation from happening. And I hope I'm using the right historical moment, right? But not too long ago, I believe it was in Charleston, South Carolina, and help me out if anybody knows this. It was when it was right around George Floyd's murder and some other
Yeah, they
things.
were carrying the torches.
So right, they were carrying the torches and some other of those things. So I remember watching. I
Richard
remember watching
Spencer.
some. Say that again.
Richard Spencer and
Yeah, yeah.
this kind of thing.
So there was a lot of talk about one side, Black Lives Matter, the other side, get out of here, and I forgot this chant that they used to have, but Jews will
Jews will not replace us.
all those different things, right? So I remember seeing some footage, and that footage was one group was on one side of the street and another group was on another side of the street, and they were yelling at each other. And I was sitting there in my mind saying, you'll never solve anything because you're just yelling at each other. And your message is being lost because nobody's listening. And I started thinking about it from a counseling lens. How do we get people to listen, right? And so that's how I approach it, right? That I want to sit people down and have them recognize that what they say and how they show up is important. Like I said with the hat, I don't know why people feel the way that they feel about the hat. but I do know that it brings up feelings for people both sides of the story, right? So opening up space so we can all talk and be a part of what's going on. I want you to know how it impacts me when I see this hat. I want you to know where it is coming from with regards to that. And so all of those things are so important to recognize and to talk about. And we shy away from those things because we've been told that it's taboo to talk about race or to talk about culture or to talk about religion or to talk about all these other things. But I want to create safe space where people can talk about those things. And it's like, so a lot of times there are people who are misguided with how they see something because they're only using it from talking points.
Right.
And then opening up the conversation to hear somebody else's story, to bring the space down, to de-escalate the space so that people can actually hear, right? Actively listen to what is happening around the hat.
Yeah.
And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't really
Totally.
have to always agree with somebody, but
But you can learn from why their perspective is,
yeah,
and you can help them maybe see something from your side of view. But if you're yelling at each other, it's never going to happen.
yeah, we're not listening to each other. On another, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that your experience. And one thing that I think about is as a man growing up in this society, you're kind of given many messages and frequently told, there's a script. Boys don't cry, and boys should not be emotional. You should not feel, and those emotions that you do feel, maybe anger might be acceptable, but vulnerability is not, and
Yeah.
that's a sign of weakness. But you know what? As I get older, as I kind of get to know myself more so, I think vulnerability might actually just be really a sign of strength.
It's really funny. I was watching the show the other night. I don't even know why I'm watching it. It's not that great, but it's a little series that I got hooked up in. And a little scene happened, and I was like sitting there, and my eyes got watery. And I'm saying, "You are not sitting up here getting watery about this thing." But again, that's what happens. So yeah, and I'm not afraid to talk about that. It happens.
Yeah, and I wonder with the whole, the make America great again, whatever it is, this white supremacy it seems to be, they want to have achieve this supremacy at the expense of another group's kind of subordination. But
It's so funny. The talk is this, right? I just saw something the other day about free speech. But it's free speech for whom, right? So when it's not your narrative, and it's not free anymore. This person has to shut up and can't talk, right?
yeah, it's like the giraffe talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's such,
Oh,
I just think it's like I think there's more harm that white supremacy has on those trying to perpetuate it. There's a because they have to be in a certain denial of reality and not they have to be willing to not see reality on reality's terms, and that to me is I think that's mentally unhealthy, but I think it's
Well,
harmful.
we all are.
can I pause for 1 second? Because Dr. Bradshaw's class has to go and we'll come back. But let me just say this. Tomorrow evening, we have my practicum class is from 6 to 10, but we have a guest speaker from 7 to 8:15. Sarah Gonzalez. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor and nationally certified counselor, EMDR therapist. And she is in private practice in Chicago. She was born in California and raised by her native Puerto Rican parents in Puerto Rico since the age of 2. And she earned her first master's degree in applied psychology from the University of Phoenix. Later, she earned her second master's in clinical mental health counseling from Chicago State. She has over 14 years working in different realms of mental health field, from clinician to trainer to supervisor. She is skilled in providing counseling to children and adults in different areas such as mood disorders, behavioral issues, depression, anxiety, trauma, family issues, adolescents at risk, children and young adults in the autism spectrum, domestic violence victims, sex workers, and individuals struggling with HIV diagnosis. She is skilled and experienced in providing counseling to clients in the LGBTQ community, including the transgendered population. Fully bilingual, Ms. Gonzalez provides services in English and Spanish in order to better meet the needs of our served population. So, internship students from Dr. Bradshaw's class, you're more than welcome to join us tomorrow at 7. I will be sending out a Zoom link and we'll make sure that everybody gets that. So, Dr. Bradshaw, thank you for coming to class tonight, and thank you to all the students that came. I hope this was helpful.
You're like
Thanks
Oprah.
for having us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. I didn't want to cut you off, Dr. Butler and Dr. Che,
Good.
but I do want to, I know, Dr. Butler, you said you needed to be heading out at 9:30, so I just
What is it? We're good. We're good.
all right, does anybody else have any questions or comments for Dr. Butler? Norris, I see your hand.
Hi, Norris.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Butler. First of all, thank you so much for reminding us that transformation begins with us, and how important it is for us to actually be experts on our subject matter. And having an expert in front of us, I always like to tap in, especially when I have someone accessible to someone like you. What do you do to keep yourself sharp with the stature that you're at this point? What do you do in a practical way just to keep yourself sharp and keep growing?
Wow. It's my tribe, I guess. And then it doesn't hurt to have somebody who, as a spouse, stays on top of you. So what you might see as polished and or staying on top of certain things, it comes with a lot of work. And it's being humble, it's being culturally humble, it's knowing that I'm not here to change the world. That's not my goal. It's never been. It's really to make sure that the message is heard. And I try to say it in a way where people can hear it, right? I'm not trying to throw it down your throat. I am here to try to make it very, very palatable that you can hear my story. And again, part of my narrative is talking about humanizing. And what I mean by that is I want people to see me as a human being. And I want you to be able to relate to my story. And if you can relate to my story, then you will have no problem recognizing how it connects to yours.
Thank you.
And I will also add, this week is the American Counseling Association's annual convention. And so we will be down in New Orleans and being around our tribe and getting rejuvenated by other people in the profession, going to sessions and keynotes. That's something that just helps to rejuvenate as well. Anybody else? Questions? Was this helpful for you all?
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
This is the best. Dr. Butler, you're the best.
Yes, I loved
I'm definitely
everything.
going to listen to those two YouTube podcasts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And Dr. Butler and I did one, we kind of joined our podcast and we were talking about, from a multicultural and social justice perspective, the use of gender pronouns. And so that's on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Dr. Tinsley, you recorded this. Are we going to be able to get a copy of it, or is it just for your own personal?
No, I will share this. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you all. You're more than welcome to join tomorrow night. We will have another guest speaker next Monday. So I will send you who that is. And if you need any assistance with clients or your sites or just your paperwork, please reach out to me so that we can schedule an individual time. Okay.
Dr. Butler, I'm probably going to be kicking myself that I will be thinking of questions that I should have thought of while I was sitting here. So,
Well,
Miss-
Dr.
so,
Tinsley knows
so
how to get,
Dr. Tinsley, you'll probably get them.
she
I
knows
was
how to get a hold of me, and you know, just Google me, you'll find me.
Yeah, and he's at University Central Florida. You can always email him. He's on LinkedIn. He's on Facebook. You can connect.
Oh, thank you
Remind
so
me of
much.
how we got
Well,
connected.
I mean, I'm sorry. I think I hogged up too much time. So, but
You did.
Oh, and we're good. I mean, she's
Yeah.
cut you off. I didn't cut you off. So, I mean, if you got some questions, you still have questions, feel free to ask me.
Yeah,
so much.
yeah. If anybody has questions, I don't want to cut you off.
Nope.
No, I have to email you.
Now.
We're probably
Yeah.
still in starstruck.
Well, you all are
Ah,
still
please
connected,
don't be.
but reach out to Dr. Butler. Just remind him how you met him here in class. And this is listen, he is somebody that you can reach out to and stay connected with, right? And don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I heard on your video, your podcast, your podcast, you said this, or how can I get more information on this? Or, hey, you know, I'm graduating from Pillar. At some point, I want to get a PhD. What tips and suggestions do you have?
What was
Okay.
your latest book you wrote?
Oh, the latest book I wrote is coming out shortly. And actually, Dr. Tinsley has a
21st century.
chapter in it. So there's a actually
Awesome.
let me okay, let me share
You
my
can
screen.
share it. You can share it. Yep.
I think it's in here. So
And I saw your email needing something else, but I'll get to it.
hold on. Needed something else.
Yeah,
The-
a lot of superstars in those book
So
chapters.
this is
Oh,
so this is the
wow.
book that you all should be using in your either intro to counseling course or your multicultural course. And it is written from a social justice perspective. We actually won an award in 2022 as a new textbook. And so I'm excited to share that. And then this is the new book that's coming out in 2024. Those of you who are getting into a doctoral program, you might want to or you're in a doctoral program and get ready to graduate your doctorate, this is a book that will be helpful in your techniques course.
Master, yeah. And helpful for studying for your national counselor exam.
Yeah. And so this book is coming out as well. So,
Wow.
Awesome.
so those are the two books. And I guess since it's recorded, you'll have access to it. I heard a picture being taken just now.
Yeah, I want to make sure I forget it. I could get it.
Yeah, and then if you see Dr. Butler, that he's been up to New Jersey Counseling Association, he spoke at the conference, and he'll be at, annual conferences when you go. Just go up and say, hey, we met at Pillar College in our Internship 2 class. So for me, it's about exposure and getting you exposed to different people in our profession to see what they're doing. And that's my goal for the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Awesome.
Do it.
Let's do that.
Stay on top of your goal.
The world is possible. Continue to dream and make your dreams a reality. Dr. Butler, I appreciate you as always. I'm greatly, I owe him, and this is what we do, but I will have to pay back because it was an evening class right in the dab smack. He's a UConn fan, you all, and the men's basketball tournament the final game is on right now.
I am a UConn grad
Oh,
and fan, so it's not just a fan.
Oh, let me clarify that. Yes,
We
yes.
bleed blue. I see what I wore today, right?
I saw that. All right. Well, thank you all.
That was
Great.
early.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you all. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Butler. And